I'd like to call the April 14th, 2015 regular meeting of the Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission to order. If you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, quick note, make sure that your cell phones, again, are either on airplane mode off or silent. Roll call. Kelly.
Kimball.
Present.
Carey.
Present.
Ostermeyer.
Present.
Davis.
Present.
Latham.
Here.
Hampe.
Here.
Let the record show that all commissioners are present with the exception of Lynn Borders, who is excused.
Okay. Amendments to the agenda. Any amendments?
No amendments to the agenda tonight.
Okay, fantastic. Ceremonies, appointments, announcements, presentations. Do we have anything?
We have none tonight.
Okay. Just to note, we have 2 public hearings on the agenda this evening. If you'd like to speak or comment on the projects, please fill out the comment sheet located in the back on the podium at the council chambers and turn it into Kelly at the front table, public hearing portion of the agenda. And before we open the public hearing, if you would like to speak, any declaration of conflict?
I do.
Okay.
I have a conflict on SUP 15-01 and PUD P-15-01. And I will be recusing myself on those 2 items.
Okay. Duly noted. Consent calendar. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve as presented.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Kelly?
Kimball.
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
Hampe.
Yes.
Ostermeyer.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Latham.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Fantastic. Citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens who wish to address the commission on an issue that, again, is not on the agenda. Comments and issues are planned future meetings, and agendas should be held for that meeting. Do we have anyone here that speaks or wishes to speak citizen issue? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Any unfinished or old business? There is none. So that brings us to the public hearing portion. So we're going to go ahead and get things started. We'll call the first public hearing the Chrislinc Properties Special Use Permit, SUP 15-01. John Manningly presenting.
Thank you and good evening, Commissioners. The applicant is Chrislinc Properties, LLC, and the applicant is requesting approval a special use permit to construct high-density multifamily residential of up to 96 units in a community commercial services zone, and that's the CCS zone. Project location is at the southeast corner of this asterisk here of Highway 41 and 16th Avenue. This here is a conceptual site plan of the proposed project. The conceptual elements include the 96 units, a clubhouse with a potential pool, and with the retainment of an approximate 3 acres on the west for a future commercial development site. The acreage is approximately 8.5. The comp plan designation for this area is commercial. For the adjacent zoning, you have CCS to the north and west, R3 to the northeast, Kootenai County high-density residential zone properties to the south and southeast, while Kootenai County egg zone properties are to the east. Prepared this map here to kind of, it's a lot of colors on it, but to kind of explain how this site fits into the area. You see here in blue, that's the CCS zone property and the proposed site for the special use permit. To the south, you have the high-density multifamily zone property in Kootenai County. That's a mobile home park. Directly east, you have some larger lot egg zone property with some more high density. A little further to the east, and this is where to the northeast you have a little 5-acre piece of some R3. There is some egg suburban in the county, not too far away. You have that strip of commercial through Highway 41 with some R2 and some other ag suburban a little bit further west. The current land use at the site is vacant with an existing single-family home. This is an update from the staff report. The staff report just said vacant, so I just wanted to clarify that. The water provider, it would be Ross Point Water District, with the sewer being provided by the City of Post Falls. So this time, this would conclude staff's introduction of the project.
Okay, thank you, sir. Applicant presentation, please come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Marshall Clark at 2320 North Atlantic Street, Suite 100, Spokane, Washington, 99205. And I actually do retail development, and brought to you the Sonic down the road, if you're familiar with that, on Highway 41. And this site here has been owned over 20 years by the current owner. He never received a proposal that he could act on to develop the site. There's so much available commercial land, particularly up Highway 41. We also own ourselves the corner through other entities, the 4.5 acres at Pole Line and 41, the southeast corner. We have not had anyone for that property either. There's another 13 acres north of it. There's so much land. I think there's somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 acres of commercial land in Post Falls. And so the question becomes, is how do you utilize this land? What's a good use of all this land? Most of it has sewer. Most of they're paying taxes on. They have sewer assessments on. What do you do with all this land in the city of Post Falls? And so this was one idea that we came up with. I still want to do retail development along Highway 41. And this is a future traffic light. This is definitely, I understand from staff, this will definitely be a future traffic light here at 16th and 41. So it'll be the next light north of Mullen. And so that'll have good control and access. But so this site is over 600 feet of frontage and over 600 feet of depth. What do you do with it? There's not enough commercial uses to use all of this land in Post Falls. So the apartment use was one of the best alternatives I could come up with for the back part of the land, because it's only it's less than 2 minutes to get to I-90. It's very convenient to people to work or retirement, or people with family. Schools are nearby. You're expanding your schools. It just seems like a good use of this property. And again, to just not let it sit another 20 years. The current gentleman is in his 80s, never found anything to do with it. And I don't want to be in my 80s and it's still sitting here in weeds. So hopefully this will be something you'll see as a practical solution to this need. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Staff report.
The Planning Division recognizes that the special use permit is necessary in order to construct a residential development in the Community Commercial Services Zone, and that a site plan review process will occur at the time of site development for both on-site and off-site improvements at the time of development, that the proposed project would be consistent with policies found within the comprehensive plan. But in light of the location and some of the surrounding properties and what was proposed, staff does propose additional conditions that aren't mentioned within the staff report. And that would be along the eastern edge of the project. There's a single family site to the east, and we don't know how long that may retain being a single family, but consider requiring a 6-foot fence along that eastern property boundary. Also, as determined by the zoning administrator, any major modifications from that conceptual site, for example, expanding the site beyond 96 units or the entire site being occupied by multifamily, that proposals like that would come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval, but with minor modifications, that those can be approved by the zoning administrator. For example, that'd be moving buildings. So they're still proposing the 96 units. They're still proposing some public amenities or on-site amenities like a like as proposed, being the clubhouse and pool, that the zoning administrator could facilitate that. The engineering division commented in regards to transportation is that currently that 16th and Highway 41, that's unsignalized, that a traffic impact analysis should be conducted by the project's proponent to identify the current performance and anticipated impacts of the project on 16th and Highway 41. And that if a traffic impact analysis is warranted, that the project would not be responsible for the entire cost of the signal. They wanted to make that brought forth, and that part of that traffic impact analysis is to assess determining the amount of any extraordinary impact associated with the project. At the time of site plan review for the apartments, that the applicant would be responsible for improving 16th Avenue along the frontage that would be adjoining the apartment project. And similarly, with the site plan review at time of the commercial project that developed, that improvements along both the Highway 41 and 16th Avenue would either be improved or potentially cashed out. Highway 41, that curb gutter, roadway illumination, stormwater swells, and a multi-use path would have to be incorporated. Then along 16th Avenue, that there's some road widening, curb gutter, roadway illumination, stormwater swells, and a sidewalk as part of those improvements. And that the road widening is 27 feet from center line face the curb. Access would need to be provided in conformance with the State Highway 41 Corridor Master Plan and City Code, and there'd be no new access points be allowed along Highway 41. In regards to domestic water, as Ross Point Water District would provide services to the site. And for sanitary sewer, that sanitary sewer has been extended to the site as part of the Post Falls Highway 41 Sewer Interceptor Local Improvement District. And that the existing facilities are adequately sized and have current capacity for the proposed use. Sewer cap fees would be required at the time of the issuance of any building permits. And that's common with any permit we issue, that's when the sewer capitalization fees are assessed and put as part of those building permits. For stormwater, is that the proposed use does not pose any change in the required methodology for treatment and disposal of stormwater on the property or along the adjoining public rights-of-way, and verification that the proposed stormwater facilities comply with current design practices and would be done at the time of the site plan review. Other agencies, we've notified all agencies. We have not received any other comments from any of the agencies. So at this time, I'd stand for any questions you have on the proposed project.
Actually, I did have one question. You said that there was no response. Have we heard anything from ITD?
No, we haven't.
I just wondered, obviously, Highway 41 being a state highway, if there was any input from them.
No, and were they notified?
Yes.
Yeah, they were notified, so.
Okay. Okay. And do we know when the 16th Street 41 is supposed to be signalized? Do we have any timeline for that?
I'm assuming it's when it's warranted or a traffic impact study showed it was warranted. I could ask, and that's the true statement.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question. The 3 acres, there's 3 acres, about 3 acres along the front of 41 that's being reserved for future commercial projects.
Yes.
If we give this variance, is this encumbering the whole thing, or is it just the section that's going to have the apartments, and will that 3 acres still carry the CCS zoning?
Legal can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand from the applicant is that it would go over the whole site. That's why there's that condition that if they propose multifamily over the whole site, then that would then come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval. That this is being approved for as they've submitted conceptually for the east two-thirds or approximate two-thirds of the site.
Okay, so they couldn't put anything else on that front without coming back?
They could
other
do-
than
they could
commercial?
do a commercial site
Other than
plan.
commercial, though, they couldn't put, extend the apartments or build less on what they, on the larger piece and then add some more, or,
No, without coming before you.
okay, all right, thank you.
That's if you approve it with those conditions presented to you.
Yes, thank you.
John, is that two pieces of property or one piece?
It's two,
Currently. It is currently two. I'm just,
with under common ownership.
okay. I'm just wondering why, and I'm not, maybe it's just a different way of doing it, but why there wouldn't be a consideration of changing to R3 for the back half of the parcel rather than a special use permit?
It may have been through discussions that keeping the avenues open with the CCS, you still have those options. R3, once you do a zone change, then you can't do the commercial. And so this kind of opens up the marketability of the site. You'd have to ask maybe the applicant exactly on why that was. That's more of a presumption response from mine.
Okay, that's fine.
John, could you clarify the cost of the traffic light? Who is going to pay for that? Is the city fully responsible? Will it be split? How's that determined?
I'll let an engineering rep come before you and answer that.
For the traffic signal, we would be utilizing the traffic study to help identify what proportionate share, if any, would be from this type of project. The signal at the intersection of State Highway 41 and 16th Avenue is in the city's impact fee list. We have, I don't remember the exact amount, but we do have a small portion of the cost of the signal identified as coming out of impact fees, and then the rest of the cost would be coming from other sources. So that could be federal aid, grants, ITD, projects in the area. Typically, a traffic signal of the magnitude at 16th and Highway 41 would run between $450,000 to $500,000 if it was to be built by at one time.
Is there any input from Idaho Transportation Department in regards to traffic signals?
Yes, the intersection itself is covered under a corridor study that was done along State Highway 41 back in about 2001, 2002 it was adopted. Currently, the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization is doing an update to that study, and it involves participation from the City of Post Falls, the City of Rathdrum, and ITD working together in updating where access points are going to be, how signals are going to work. Part of the goal of updating that study is ITD would like to take that study when it's done and updated, get it adopted by the state board so that they're in a better position to make financial decisions as to how and when further improvements along Highway 41 will occur, such as traffic signals, widening the roadways, making some modifications to existing access points.
So they would take into consideration an increase of 96 units in that particular area?
That is correct. And when we do a traffic study, since it involves their facility, they would be involved in the traffic study with us in the review and making comments on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay.
Right,
Thank you,
thank you.
sir. Testimonies. Kelly, do we have any testimonies in favor?
Yes, we do. Well, they're written letters.
So therefore, I will read those. All right. To whom it may concern, I would like to voice my support for the proposed apartment complex at Highway 41 and 16th. Post Falls needs greater retail strength, and having more people in the vicinity of the commercial district of Highway 41 will bring businesses and jobs to the community and will assist in making the city more walkable. It seems like an excellent use for vacant piece of land and will also provide property tax dollars to the city of Post Falls. Sincerely, Kim Griffith. Next one. It says, we own commercial land on Highway 41, and I am in support of the proposed multifamily development on Highway 41 and 16th that would bring 100 apartment units. And then Section A, background. Highway 41 presently has a high concentrated number of retail and restaurant users on both sides of the street. There is a shortage of multifamily housing options, and in particular, apartments. Demographic studies show that more young people are interested in renting and having a mobile lifestyle. In addition, renting an apartment is usually the first step towards home ownership. In short, there is a pent-up demand for apartments. To provide balance for the existing retail and restaurant community, new apartments are needed. As more residents have access to the apartment in the area, this will also stimulate future growth, and market will respond and provide in full with wide ranges of services touching all age groups: churches, grocery stores, schools, medical, and retirement home. Conclusion: the economic impact study, building 100 new apartment units, cannot go unnoticed. She provides a link for apartment economic impact and discusses the spike in the economy due to apartment construction and new jobs. Overall, both the community and the local government authorities should support this measure. Paul DeLay. Next one. I support the proposed multifamily development on Highway 41. Sincerely, Pat Vollmer. And finally, we are writing in support of the proposed special use permit to create apartment complexes just off Highway 41 and 16th Avenue in Post Falls. As business owners on Highway 41, we feel that the increased rental housing will spur economic growth and provide benefit to the businesses in Post Falls, including ours. We were first drawn to the city of Post Falls in 2009 because of the growing population and increased economic activity despite the recession. We'd like to see the city continue on the path of growth and feel that the proposed apartment complex would be a step in that direction. While there has been a lot of new construction for single-family homes in Post Falls, it seems that the rental market has been lacking. And based on feedback from customers over the years, there is a demand for higher-end apartment homes in Post Falls. With all the land that is dedicated to commercial use on 41, we think this apartment complex would provide a contemporary mix of retail and residential that would draw people to Post Falls and stimulate further economic development along Highway 41. We appreciate your time and consideration. Adam and Paige Kaplan, owners of Slick Rock Tanning Spa on Highway 41. So those are the 4 letters that were submitted in favor. Any others in favor?
We do not.
Okay. Any neutral?
No.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Those wishing to speak? Okay. Ron Trenkle says, I am in opposition of this permit. It would be bad for the businesses having such a special permit and will lessen the value of our land. Okay, thank you very much. Any others?
No, we do not.
Okay. Rebuttal from the applicant. Oh. Correct, and I believe that your opposition letter was included within the packet, so we received that. Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any rebuttal from the applicant at this time? No rebuttal? Okay. Any other questions for the staff before we close this hearing?
I do have one, a question for the staff. So when we send these concerns out to the different entities, whether it's the police department or whatever department is out of transportation, we don't get any response back from them. Is there any follow-up that takes place?
Yes.
And we just don't get any response back, one way or the other?
No.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, that being said, we'll go ahead and close the special use permit 15-01. Discussion. Start down on my left. Vicki, any comment?
Well, my concern was the commercial being reserved and kept there on Highway 41 and be a buffer for apartments or anything else as a residential use. And I think that was covered, that they would have to come back to us if they decided to change that, and we would have the opportunity then to deny. So I think that was taken care of for me.
Okay, starting at the other end. Nancy?
I think my biggest concern is just the traffic on Highway 41 and 16th right there. It already is, there's a lot of traffic there already. However, I think that with the traffic study, and there's going to be development somewhere, there's going to be more people, so as long as they're appropriately doing traffic study, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. Fred?
Traffic is a concern. The additional 96 units in that area, I think it's kind of a concern to me also. And I'd be a lot more comfortable if the study was done incorporating the 96 units now instead of sometime in the future. So that's just some of my thoughts.
Mark?
I'm for the project, and with the one caveat that the commercial strip along the west side retains as commercial, and we make sure that motion option as presented includes that, which I think it does, and I'm kind of carefully reading through that, but I don't think that's wise to have any kind of an apartment use there. So it made me a little bit nervous to allow a special use permit over the entire lot, but as long as that's very clear that would retain CCS use, that makes perfect sense to me, because it is along Highway 41, and that would be that would not make a lot of sense for a variety of reasons for me. So.
Okay. Coming from a kid standpoint, I always get concerned building in that density along a state highway, making sure obviously buffer for the kids. And again, I know that people have mixed feelings, but I would be curious as far as vacancy and occupancy as far as levels for apartments in Post Falls. It seems that people are mixed, but I feel like we do have a lot at this time, but that's that. So.
I have a quick
comment?
question. I might have misunderstood. Will a traffic study be done before building is done? Or?
Do we need to reopen?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Okay.
That was, from my interpretation from the engineering's report, was that would be done as part of the site plan review to look at what would be the impact, so then you could assess potential proportionate share for that light if it was warranted.
Okay, so that would alleviate any worries about the traffic if they said there's going to be too much traffic, we have to have a stoplight.
From my understanding, that would be correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then on the vacancy rate currently, when we went to the Kootenai County Market Forum, you're kind of wondering what the vacancy rate was. The current rate for apartments is 1.8%.
Well, okay. Good to know. Any other comment? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion at this time. I know, Ray, you can't say anything.
I know, I got to.
I'll make the motion. I would move to approve Chrislinc Properties SUP 15-01 as presented. And am I missing anything?
With the conditions in the staff presentation?
Correct, thank you. With the conditions, including with the staff presentation that we heard tonight.
Been a motion, do we have a second?
I second.
Motion and second. Roll call, Kelly?
Kimball, Carey,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Campy,
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Ostermeyer.
No.
Motion carried. Isn't there? One, two, three.
Okay. Second public hearing on the agenda this evening is impact fee revisions, CIP-15-01. John Manningly presenting. We'll go ahead and open this public hearing.
Yes, the applicant is the City of Post Falls. requested action is for the Planning and Zoning Commission acting as the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee. They're being asked to review the proposed revisions to the public safety and single-family residential impact fee categories, hear the public testimony, and provide recommendations to the City Council. For the single-family homes, they're being modified from an average housing unit basis as opposed to being assessed by bedroom count. Currently, that's depending on how residential plans come in, by their bedrooms, they get assessed different rates on their bedroom counts. Historically, prior to our current methodology, it was always done on an average cost basis. And what this does is, by this modification, it would mitigate penalizing potential constructions of 3-bedroom homes with an office. Sometimes they're building an office, their intents to build an office, but it happens to have egress windows and a closet, and therefore they pay the rate at a 4-bedroom rate. Also, individuals who understand our rate and maybe want to get a discount, they can build a 3-bedroom house, throw in a large room, later on stick in a closet and egress window, and they get their 4-bedroom house, or they may make it a bedroom, and now you have a potential bedroom without egress and without a closet. So by fixing this potential scenario, it actually clarifies things up and it makes it simpler for the developer and for staff. The 3-bedroom home would increase $241 with this approval from $2,641 per house to the $2,802, and it's actually 60 cents, not 00, so slight correction there. As well as the 4-bedroom home or greater, that would decrease almost $1,000 at $931.51 from the $3814.11 to the $2882.60. In regards to the public safety impact fee, this proposal is because the police station and the vehicle maintenance facility components are being modified from a buy-in approach to being incremental. So currently, the old methodology was that there was debt that had been incurred, and so the impact fees was paying off some of the debt. And so since some of that debt's been paid off, now they want to move to an incremental approach going forward. And what the incremental is they understand what their future costs are going to be. No different than like a street impact fee. They know what they're going to improve in the future, and so it's done incrementally to provide future needs. Also, there was an elimination of the animal shelter component within public safety as well. So this application is processed as an update to the capital plans of Post Falls and a revision to the development impact fees. It would amend the 2011 Tischler by study, which since then has been adjusted based on the NR index. So as a table to kind of denote kind of the changes, you see the impact fees for multifamily, single-family detached. There's the 2882.60 that you see. They'd both be treated the same. Multifamily, actually, looking at the two, is going to drop slightly with this revision. And then there's a few cents change on various categories for the non-residential. And actually, the way I see this table, instead of it saying single-family detached, once it's approved, you would have a single category called single-family home line item. So I'd stand for any further questions you have that was in that staff report regarding impact fees or any other clarifications.
I have quite a few questions, John. So this is, just to kind of preface it, I look at the impact fees and us as an advisory committee as probably one of our more important jobs, because it has widespread effect on the cost of housing in Post Falls and ultimately the quality of housing. Because if the money is going to a permit fee, then it's not going into the house. So I do know that the city of Post Falls, a residential permit Generally, per door is quite a bit higher in Post Falls than in Coeur d'Alene, by an order of several $1,000s. And so a lot of that is impact fees. My first question, it has to do with the recent Supreme Court decision, State of Idaho, the NIBCA versus the City of Hayden. And I talked to council about this just a little bit before, but has staff or other city council or the city attorney looked at that decision versus these changes to our impact fees and how that might affect this?
I do know that they're aware of it, and I do know that this particular amendment is just a small change. It's not a holistic modification to the impact fee. It is right as our recommended changes by legal counsel, specifically the public safety element of it. Will may be able to chime in and give more details from the legal standpoint from it.
I haven't looked at that decision. From talking to Ray about his knowledge of it, it seems to reflect an older decision that involved the city of Haley's sewage treatment facility, and basically governs how those funds can be collected for expenditures. And I am assuming that the city attorney is going to, look at that case. You're acting as the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, and your recommendations are going to go to the city council, and the city attorney will be advising the city council as to any recent decisions and whether that would make the impact fees for water and sewer facilities, which I think that case governs, would affect what he's going to recommend as to whether the city can charge those fees or not. So I guess the legal decision I don't think is something for you to be concerned about, but raise concerns about the effect of impact fees on housing are something that you should be concerned about in your advisory capacity.
Okay, thank you. I know this is a public hearing and it gets noticed in the paper accordingly. Has the city reached out to any of the builders or the building contractors associations to get their take on this?
As a part of this, I can ask Kelly, were they notified of this change?
I'd send them out to the notice of jurisdictions, and I don't know if they're on that list. And I don't have that information.
And the reason I ask is that I think that they're a large component of all the housing builders in the area should probably weigh in on this, and I think it's important to get their opinion, since any increase in impact fee just gets passed on to the home buyer.
Yeah, I think there's a balance too between that 241 increase on the a 3-bedroom and less, and the safety of the residents and that end up buying houses and they end up using them for bedrooms, and they weren't built with proper egress windows and or closets.
Absolutely, and that also kind of, I guess, the going from the 3 to a 4, or 4 and more, I guess. How did you calculate, or how was the average, so to speak, calculated? I didn't really see that or an explanation of that in the study or in the information that we got. Was it based on the last years or last 4 or 5 years, 4-bedroom plus versus 3-bedroom minus, and then averaged out? Was it a way? I mean, how did that?
I didn't have that direct conversation with Tischler Bice on the methodology of that. I can only, once again, it's going to be a presumption that we do a lot more 3-bedroom homes than we do 4-bedroom plus, And so that would be why the increase, there's an increase in the 3 bedrooms and a decrease in the 4 bedrooms plus. But what that proportionate share is between 3-bedroom, 4-bedrooms, I'm assuring that they used our growth rates and the vehicle trip miles as part of their model for that result number there.
Okay, because it just seems that the result is that the smaller single-family or the entry-level home buyer is now paying more, and the move-up market, the larger house, is paying less. Quite a bit less, actually. $1,000 less. And I mean, I understand that there's a dichotomy there. It strikes me as, I guess I kind of wonder if we should be, in effect, penalizing first-time home buyers or home buyers that are buying smaller houses versus what we have today, and really what the backing for that is.
And once again, it comes down to, the 3-bedroom and the 4-bedroom plus. The reason for its rationale for being developed was inherently to reduce the impact fees of sorts, and not that there's not merit to that, but the resultant from that was house plans that would be approved that would be future used and facilitated as bedrooms, and they wouldn't have proper egress and closets. And at the same token, some people were getting charged, for, they weren't intending to use it as a bedroom, but they just wanted it as an option. Now they have to pay the higher fee. So by having an average seemed to be, it's a home, pay a fee. It doesn't matter, what does 1 bedroom delineate there?
Okay. Another question I had to do with, and a lot of it seems a little bit germane to the last public hearing, where there's a traffic impact analysis required for multifamily development. Is a traffic impact analysis would analyze their impact on the local infrastructure and then make an attempt to mitigate it. Is there a method in our current policy that gives them credit or relief from these impact fees? For instance, the traffic impact fee. They do a traffic impact study as required by staff, mitigate their impacts. Is there a double dip, so to speak, going on?
From my perspective and looking at it, it's all done on this last rationale was by vehicle miles traveled, and they have categorical uses, and they share the common principle, whether it's a single-family home, a multifamily, a commercial shopping center, and it's all by vehicle miles traveled by the proposed use, and it's on an average basis for the most part.
As I read it here, the traffic impact fee for residential is based on vehicle trip ends.
Vehicle trip ends?
Not trip miles. And if it's vehicle trip ends, then that's what a traffic impact analysis, that's the basis of a traffic impact analysis that someone would do for any sort of development, be it a Walmart, any sort of commercial development, or a apartment building, or a residential development. So I just want to make sure that there's no double dipping, because as I read up here in the state code part, there's, I think it was item number 4, as Tyler Beisch talks about the state code. Number 4, applicable statutes and standards. Ensure that those who benefit from new growth and development are required to pay no more than their proportionate share of the cost of public facilities needed to serve new growth and development, and to prevent duplicate and ad hoc development requirements. So that's kind of goes part and parcel with what I was just
I'll have,
Mr. Chairman, if I could provide just a little response to that. It's a good question, but in my mind, we're kind of talking about two different things in regards to the impact, the overall impact that the impact fee analysis is based on, is on the overall impact that those additional homes may have, that their contribution to the overall traffic system. So that's one fee, and that's what the impact fee is based on. So when you have a project like the previous one where you have a multifamily facility that's built next to a major intersection that may need upgrading or will need upgrading at some point, there's also an impact on that intersection based on the location. So for that business, in that case, to go forward and have an analysis done to review the direct impact is over and above the overall impact cost analysis that the fees are based on.
Well, I would agree that there could be a higher, so 98 units at, the traffic impact was what, $700 or $800 or whatever it is. So there's $80,000 in impact fees. That would come right out of the building permit. But would that also, if they were to do impact or mitigate their impacts, wouldn't that lead to a credit? I mean, shouldn't they be entitled to some sort of a credit?
Not necessarily, because the overall impact is on the entire traffic system, not necessarily that intersection. So in their contribution to that intersection wouldn't necessarily be 100% or 50%. It would be a proportional share of whatever their potential impact is based on other uses, other businesses, other, typical traffic in that area. So for instance, they wouldn't be required to pay for a $450,000 light because they're developing one property. That impact would be distributed potentially throughout.
I would agree. I mean, the majority of the
other grants, there's other things that come into play.
Sure,
so.
and I understand that there's not 100% impact and that they wouldn't be on the hook for everything. I just want to make sure that whatever, any impact, I mean, as you get further away from a project, the ripple gets smaller. And so that's the way it is with traffic. It all of a sudden it becomes background. And so, I mean, I understand that. But it also comes down to, and this is maybe just a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but the park impact fees and where they're used. And for instance, Fieldstone has 800 or so single-family units paying $2,000 a piece for, so 600, so $1.2 million in impact fees. And there's no new parks in the area. And the park impact, or the park master plan, shows that the area just south and east of there is drastically underserved. And so I want to make sure that when we make recommendations to city council, that we are recommending, one, that it's fair, and two, that the impact fees get used in reasonable proximity to the development happening, so that it's not a impact, a cluster of impact fees coming in East Post Falls goes to a whitewater park on the river. I just want to, if there's an area that's underserved and it's taking in impact fees, I think those impact fees should go to, should be used in that area. Acquisition of land, development of that land as a park, et cetera.
Yep. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, comment again. The park impact fees weren't utilized to develop a whitewater park.
I know.
But to give that impression in a public forum is inconsistent with what we do. And it's important that everybody knows, I think, that we do make every effort. And I know the Parks Department, I would speak for them, but they do make every effort to centralize the payments for parks in those areas. And there's often, with the development, as you spoke about, there's often a master development agreement where at a certain phase or a certain phase of development, say 50%, whatever it may be, that's part of that agreement, that triggers the development at that park and defines the participation of the parties, whether that be the city, the developer, if it's a combined participation project, that those parks are developed. They don't, it's unfortunate that sometimes they don't get developed for a few years because on say, an 800 lot subdivision, it may take 10 years plus to build out these projects. And so you have, a considerable amount of homes that are built, and people saying, where's the park? Well, the master development agreement may not require a park until 50%, and that 50% may take 10 years to get to. And so there's things that happen in that case, and we do, in the short time that I've been here, I can tell you that there is exceptional effort to make sure that those impact fees for parks are spent in relation to those areas. Now, at the same time, there are opportunities for regional facilities that can be enjoyed by the entire community, and that those facilities, in my mind, are an option for park impact fees, if they do, in fact, provide an overall use, community center type of a facility or a regional park or something that provide those use. So,
just to give you a little background, larger cities would have zones, and there'd be, the city would be divided into 4 different zones, and each zone would take into consideration the impacts that were going to be in that zone. The decision for Post Falls was made when the fees were initially adopted, and I'd invite anyone to correct me if my memory is inaccurate, was the whole city was small enough that everybody, benefited the same from money going to Quamillion Park on one end. Everybody on the other end of town benefited from it just as much, and it was appropriate only to have one zone. My recollection and understanding is that Coeur d'Alene, for instance, has 2 zones. Those 2 zones have different impact fees in each zone based on the geographical proximity to what improvements are needed, what improvements benefit the whole town. Might be spread between both zones, but I think parks are, neighborhood parks are different in the 2 zones. So you should just know that your impact fees in Post Falls go to pay for all the parks. Your traffic impact fees go towards all the elements of the traffic plan. You've only got 1 police facility, so that wouldn't have different zones anyway. But that's the way the system was set up originally by the city, and the city engages Tischler and Associates to to monitor this and to make a recommendation to you and to the city council to ensure that you weren't violating the code as far as charging excessive fees. The issues that Ray raised on the housing, there are some cities that have an initial impact fee for 1 bedroom and a higher fee for each bedroom on up to 5 or 6 or whatever they think is appropriate to have a different impact fee for. And I think his concern about a residence that only has is a studio or a 1 bedroom paying the same impact fee as somebody who has 8 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms is a valid concern, and that you should be thinking about that when you review these things. One argument that would relate to, for instance, traffic impact fees is that make an argument that a couple living in a 1-bedroom apartment doesn't really generate that much more traffic than someone who has a 5-bedroom house. But I think you can also make an argument that if they've got 3 teenage kids, they're going to probably have 10 times as much traffic impact as a one-bedroom house. So those are things to keep in the back of your mind when you're making these considerations and making recommendations. And if you see something that you don't think is quite right, which Ray does, you should voice those thoughts, and we should get them in the recommendations to the city council.
Thanks. Thanks, Will. Any more,
I'm done.
any more questions? Yes, sir.
In our agenda packet, there's a section here, applicable statutes and standards. First one's Idaho Code 6782, development impact fees, and the second one, Idaho Code 67-8206, procedures for the imposition of development impact fees. So it's my understanding that you use these guidelines pertaining to the recommendation that you're presenting to us. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Obviously, a unique public hearing in the sense of, John, I believe that you've done your introduction, your presentation, and staff reports
This is true.
all in one swooping motion. And it is also my understanding that we do need to go over, but do we have any testimonies in favor, in neutral, or in opposition of?
We do not. I would like to add about the public notice. It is advertised in the paper 2 times, a week prior to the hearing and
Okay.
15 days.
We do have a gentleman in the back that raised his hand, but are we past the point of being
Yes.
able to? Okay. So that being said, does the applicant have any rebuttal or any additional comments?
Nope, no additional.
Any other questions for John before we close the hearing?
Actually, I would like to add, now that I think of it, you could, depending on what you want to do, you could recommend one and not the other. You don't have to recommend to council the residential part. You can do the public safety element and make that as part of your motion, or you can make the motion as presented with both the single-family modification and the public safety.
Chairman, I'd like to just throw this out there. I was able to get my hands on the Tischler bias study from 2011 today. I think everybody here got it. It was 97 pages of a lot of numbers. And I didn't get a chance to really wade through it and digest it very well. And so, until doing so, I think I would feel a lot more comfortable making a decision on this after I have a chance to go through that and understand it a little bit better. I would move that we continue the public hearing, leaving it open. And also, I think that gives the community another chance to show up and voice their opinion on this if they desire, but continue it until our next meeting in May. I'd just like to maybe throw that out there on the table and get a little discussion on that.
Will, from the legal counsel, do we close it, then reopen it, or what do we need to do?
I think that you can certainly continue it, and we can determine whether we need to re-advertise it or not if you want to reopen the public hearing at the next meeting. You'd be continuing it to your next meeting next month, so there'd be adequate time to just re-advertise it again if you want to do that.
Not for next month, I don't think. We need, well, yeah. I guess we
Did they
can.
close the public hearing?
No.
Public hearing's still open. You could just continue it and
Then
leave
we
the
wouldn't have
public
to
hearing open and still
re-advertise.
allow for additional testimony at your next meeting.
Okay, that being said, the motion was put forth to continue to leave this public hearing open until further review from commission can take place and adequate information distributed to the community. So we had a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. Kelly?
Kimball,
Yes?
Carey,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Hampi,
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Ostenmeyer.
Yes.
Motion carried.
So moved.
We can probably, if anyone else wants to look at that study, are we able to, do we have a digital copy of it that we
I
can
sent
send?
it to the
Send it to us.
Yep, so we all have a copy of that. Okay, then we will leave that open. So, that brings us to item number 11, new business. Fieldstone Apartments final PUD P-15-01. And John, why don't you go ahead?
State of permanence. So, I don't mind. So Fieldstone Apartments, the applicant is Viking Construction. The requested action is to review and approve the requested Fieldstone Apartments final PUD. The location of this project is on the northeast corner of Syringa and Pole Line, right there at the asterisk. In more detail, it's highlighted in blue there. And as a side note, you got single-family homes to the northeast, some mixed housing type single-family homes just to the west, and then some duplex right at this location is where the duplexes are, which I'll comment on a bit later. Project size is approximately 8.2 acres. The comp plan designation is single-family residential with a mixed-use overlay. The current land use is vacant. Surrounding land uses, I just mentioned for the most part, except for there is a American Legion just to the south. And there are some other Kootenai County type properties to the south as well, single family. Water would be provided by Ross Point Water District, sewer provided by the City of Post Falls, and the proposed density of the project is 25.2 units, which is just a little over 7 units greater than what we have in our R3 zoning district, our high-density multifamily. For the final PUD, there's some review criteria, though, on approvals, and that they should exist as an independent unit, have adequate assurance, and will be provided that such objectives would be attained. Individual phases of any such development must conform to the overall density and use consideration as approved within the preliminary PUD and recorded in those agreements. The project is proposing 208 multifamily units, which would total about 1,120 units for the whole preliminary PUD area. The outcome of this would be 3.5 units an acre for the entire preliminary PUD, of which is what the preliminary PUD was proposed. So although which on the previous site you saw the 25.2 units, it's still consistent with this criteria of the 3.5 units per acre. Another criteria is that any exception from the standard district requirements that would be warranted by the merits of the design and the amenities incorporated in the final development plans in accordance with the approved preliminary PUD and any adopted policies of the City Council. As approved within the preliminary PUD, for the most part, the Fieldstone development meets all the conditions except there was some commercial properties reserved for this area. So with approval of this, there wouldn't be any commercial properties resulting at this location. As you see within the staff report, I did comment, though, that we do have an abundance of commercial, and staff does question whether or not this site is the best location for commercial. Another criteria would be that the existing and proposed utility services be adequate for the proposed use, and there are no outstanding issues for providing city utility services for this site. Obviously, the water services is provided by Ross Point Water District. For the planning division, is that the proposed Fieldstone Apartments final PD is the last remaining phase of the Fieldstone preliminary planned PUD development area. Also, once again, noted about the removal of the commercial use. The proposed development does meet, in our PUD, we do require a 10% open space requirement. So with approval of this, they'll still be meeting that 10% open space for a preliminary PUD, and those calculations were within the staff report. Also, I've included Exhibit A and Exhibit A7, where that open space is at in the green. And it follows the methodology at the time of it was approved as being open space areas. Upon site development, city staff would require the developer to submit a site plan review prior to issuance of any building permits, and that the 25.2 units can be facilitated through the site plan review process. The applicant did propose two-story products along the eastern boundary, because as you recollect, on this spot, that's where the single-family homes are. So the intent would be to kind of mitigate the effect of some of that three-story apartments by transitioning to two-story going eastward. And one of the elements as part of the site plan review that's important is we look at lot coverage and stormwater treatment, ADA parking, trash enclosures, and you know, as a side note from maybe it's more of an opinion, sites can be facilitated above 18 units per acre as long as you can meet stormwater management, you can address ADA and the site design criteria that's part of site plan review. This project did also see a reduction in the land dedicated to multifamily. In the staff report, you can see that originally there was about 18 acres that was approved for multifamily. That, from what I assessed, is that it reduced to about 13.5 acres approximately. Transportation facilities, they've been installed in compliance with the city's current transportation master plan. And the proposed access points complies with the city's access management standards. In regards to water reclamation, that the facilities have been installed and are in compliance with the city's current water reclamation master plan. And that city facilities have the current capacity to provide service for the development of the proposed use. In regards to domestic water, as stated before, Ross Point Water District would be the provider. And once again, we notified other agencies and did not receive any input in regards to the proposed project. So I'd stand for any questions you have for me in regards to the proposal.
Is there only going to be just the one access into this development off of Syringa there? So I'm looking.
Let's see, I can look. I can ask legal if there is an applicant representative here this evening, can they respond to that?
Sure.
That question?
Will.
Oh,
Yeah, I think the,
it's in our packet.
you know, I
It
guess,
shows up.
I think the plan is, what we've got in front of us is just one access.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, so I was just,
If that's inaccurate, I guess somebody should comment about it.
We assume that it's accurate at this point. You certainly could ask that question to the applicant. Right time.
okay.
Yeah, this here does depict one.
Yeah, so, okay.
Actual driveway.
Any other questions?
So just to clarify, we're talking about an actual driveway into it. I mean, there's roads all around it, obviously, but what we're talking about is that
Into
there's
the
just
development
one
itself.
basic driveway where people would be coming in and out of it. Okay, yes,
It's similar to other apartment projects of this size, the same kind of drive, ingress, egress.
okay.
Same-
It normally only has one.
I don't know if that's normal.
Oh, okay.
I would believe it probably varies from
But
one
if you
site.
wanted to, if you go to Greens Ferry, you could take a left and get into it that way, too. Or am I missing something?
No.
If you drive over apartments.
Oh,
Ultimate way to get into it.
you, no, you
Well, there'd be no there's no way they could outlet on a pole line, so that wouldn't be permitted.
Correct.
So really, it comes in whether or not there should be 2 to the northeast or 1 off Syringa, if that would be permissible through engineering.
So if I were driving on Greens Ferry Road, and I can't read the small print of the street, but right where the R is in Greens Ferry,
Do you want me to put it on for you?
Robert Paul is Assistant City Engineer. The project is showing the one access point onto Syringa. If the proponent wanted to provide additional access points
Okay,
to...
I see.
We would be able to do that. Additionally, if Emergency Services was to come during the site plan review process and say they need to put another access point in, that does not contradict with our access control policies that we have in place. The only place that would be difficult to get an additional access point would be onto Pole Line Avenue. Multifamily being a commercial use, you could do that, but you have a berm in that area with a gas main, which would create a, from an engineering standpoint, an extremely difficult, if even possible, to have a safe driveway approach. So you're going to end up with one on Syringa and possibly one on the White Sands Lane, but it may not even be necessary.
Other questions?
Then you consider one ingress and egress sufficient for this many units?
To be honest, from a planning perspective, I rely a lot on fire as part of the site plan review and what their comments are. From a use standpoint, that's where I would be looking at as planning and where it's located.
And at this point, there's no problem with, from the fire department or anything, or police, or we haven't heard, or?
We haven't heard a comment, but if they required 2 as part of site plan review, whether this showed 1 or not, they'd be required as part of site plan review to put a second one in.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? Anyone?
I think it's,
Vicki? No?
no, I think it seems like they're putting in less units than they originally could have, so, or
No, they're
using
putting in
less
a lot
space.
more units. They're putting in about 40%
More?
more than is allowed by the current standard. So that's my concern. That's a huge jump. 40% is a lot. And I guess that's my comment. That just seems excessive to me. I mean, 10%, 15% wiggle room, but 40 seems like a lot.
Fred?
No comment.
Mark?
I don't have any comments.
Okay. That being said, unless we have any more questions for John, because he hasn't really gotten any this evening, we'll be looking for a motion.
I don't know if I didn't hear it, but did you guys close the public hearing?
It's not a public hearing. It's a new business.
Yeah, this is new business.
Oh, that's
so,
right.
yeah.
Sorry,
No, it's funny
I
because
ran from one to the next, and
honestly, John, I almost
I
grabbed
just
the
thought I was in
gavel.
another. Do we have another one after this?
No, we're good. If it brings you peace of mind, we can bang the gavel, just, but no. New business, but yeah. Okay. Questions have been answered. No comments. Looking for a motion.
Go ahead. You're good at it.
Do it 2 times in a row here. I'll go ahead and make a motion. I would vote to approve the Fieldstone Apartments final PUD P-15-01 with the exhibits presented and John Manley's presentation as presented with no conditions.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Vice Chairman, there are conditions actually on the staff analysis. that
Oh, and I'm
should be
sorry,
included
correct.
with the motion. Thank you.
Yes, that's right, with the conditions presented in the staff report.
Thank you.
So the motion goes as moved to approve with the conditions the staff presented, correct?
Correct, that is correct.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Have a second? Kelly?
Carrie?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Hampi?
No.
Latham?
Yes.
Ostermeyer?
No.
Motion carries, right? Yeah.
Okay. Staff comments.
We have no staff comments tonight. Thank you.
No staff comments. Commission comments. Anything for the good of the order? Okay, none being said, be looking for a motion of adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Adjourn.